You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, I am so excited because I have Jennifer Lee with me. Now, Jennifer's here to talk to us about an interesting topic, and that is writing your family a love letter. Now, I know you're probably saying, Tiffany, love letter, what does this have to do with money, business, or finance? Please explain. And so that's what Jennifer is going to be here to tell us about. So, hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
Yes, my pleasure. So let's hop right into it because, like I said, my audience is probably like, a love letter, really? How does this fit into, first of all, what is it? And then how does this fit into our personal finance discussion?
Sure. Well, in my industry, I've been in the world of financial planning for 27 years or so now. And some people like to talk about money and other people like to skirt the issue. So talking about writing your family love letter encompasses all of those components indirectly and allows me as an advisor to get to the root of things, make sure people are prepared. So writing your family love letter encompasses a number of things, certainly thinking about, where are the passwords? Is there any cash in the house? Where are the valuables? What do those things mean to you and who do they go to? But it's also about communicating to your spouse, to your children, your values and what's important to you about life, about marriage, about relationships, about contributing to your community. What are your hopes and dreams for your children? A lot of times couples also, want to say, kind of a little joke, my dad said to my mom, he said, give me 1 year, he said, and then you can date people. But it's a very personal thing. But, you want to communicate to your spouse that, hey, it's okay to, fall in love again. If I'm not here, I want you to be happy. So it really encompasses everything from passwords to where are your important documents to what kind of life insurance do you have, to your trusted advisors? Who's the attorney? Who's the accountant? Who's the advisor that you trust to take care of your family as they move forward in scary situations when you're no longer there?
Absolutely. And, as you were just explaining it to the audience, I feel like doing this exercise, just writing this love letter could open up so many difficult conversations. What do you want them to do when you die? Also thinking about kids, like what is important in our family? What are our family values? Things like that. And these are conversations that usually don't get talked about. And having this love letter concept, I think is absolutely genius because it comes from a place of love versus a place of, well, you need to do this or you need to do that. So is that why the concept kind of came up?
Well, I think that it's difficult to talk about death and it's difficult to talk about the future and the what ifs. And so, I love doing this talk because there's really three groups of people. You're going to end up as the person who is the writer and says, "Oh my gosh, I have to write 3 of these and write down the important topics," and you're making notes and you're ready to do it. And then there's the second group who leaves the talk and goes home and says to their spouse, to their parents, to their business partner, "Oh my gosh, you have to do this for me because I don't know all of this information." And then there's the last group, which I call, and I usually show a flash of an ostrich. And this is a group of people who just would rather have stepped out and gotten a cup of coffee during this difficult conversation. And it's okay. There's plenty of ostrich in our world, in our life, and that's okay. This is just a way to get introduced to some of these important things. So oftentimes I will stop the audience and pause and say, okay, right now, this is the last phone call you can make. Who are you calling and what do they need to know? Right? Obviously, you're going to tell them how you feel about them and how important they are in your life, but you're also going to tell them, about the kids' soccer schedule and how important the teddy bear is. And, you're gonna tell your spouse about where the passwords are kept and, what's important to you. And it's a scary thought to have that conversation, but I think it also wakes you up.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't forget, you can't deny that thought process. Now you've got it in your head. You know who you have to call and what you have to say. So, write it down.
Absolutely. And, you shared a good story with me right before we hit record. And, how did you get introduced to this topic and this concept?
I got introduced to this topic a long, long time ago, but I will tell you that, I experienced it in a very palpable way when my father got diagnosed with a significant health issue. He had a diagnosis with a glioblastoma brain tumor. Mm-hmm. And when you get that kind of a diagnosis, what do? You start to talk to doctors, you start to strategize, you start to plan. Well, my dad was an advisor. He did not write his family love letter, but he delivered it to us in person. Mm. It wasn't really planned, but here is this pragmatic person who knows he has to communicate to his children. My mom was what I'll call a non-moneyed party. She's just not, she's not an ostrich, but she's hey, you need to write that love letter to me because I don't know all these things. So she wants to know, but she wants you to write it down. And, so my dad and we had a family trip just after his diagnosis, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, he had us on the deck talking about what was important in his life, who influenced him, what the positive things and wonderful things have been in his life. He talked about his expectations of us as his kids. For now and in the future. He said, look, I don't talk to you about money, but I want to tell you what your mom will have. And, one of the funny things that we like to joke about is he said, he got very serious. He said, your mom will never, ever pull out her Visa when you're out to dinner. And so we're always fumbling to get that, that Visa card and make sure we're getting the bill. She did trick me once. So it's been almost 8 years, and she's like, okay, enough with this. But, I promised my father, so you got to follow through. And he even went as far as to tell us what he wanted for his burial. Our entire family, all of our life had been, buried in caskets. He wanted to be cremated. That was a new thing. How would we have known that? He said who he wanted to give his eulogy, who he wanted to sing, and what he wanted them to sing. I mean, it was really kind of intense. But and you don't have to go that extreme, right? He's not your typical person. Yeah, I do this talk a lot, and you don't get that many people in the audience who are going to go down to that detail. But hey, if you want to, awesome. But I think most importantly, it's just communicating, the qualities in your life, the expectations you have of the people in your life, and why they're important to you.
Yeah. And, I feel like writing it down in a love letter also cuts out any gray area. Now, granted, let me just preface with the audience. This is not in, let me restart. Please edit that out. So let me preface with the audience that this is not to take the place of all of the estate planning documents that you do need to have. This is something that works in tandem. And I'm just thinking that, having it down as a love letter, it cuts out some of the gray areas that the legal documents may have missed. And then also it could be passed down as a family heirloom. Like, how cool is it that, like, let's say your dad is great grandpa now, and it's like, this is who inspired him. This is who influenced him. This is who played a big role in his life. And that's stuff that you can't get from doing just like typical genealogy research, and so on and so forth. So I feel like doing these love letters could actually also be like heirlooms that get passed down from generation to generation.
Most definitely. I actually have, my dad did write a few little notes to each of the kids. There's three of us. And, my note is maybe 2 sentences long. But it's mine. And it's important.
Right.
And I have it on my desk, and it's something that, you read periodically, and it's just a tiny little communication, and that means so much to me. Just the experience, it's a little bit of a terrifying experience. My sister came into my room at 6 a.m. on the first day of this trip, and she said, "Do you want to come upstairs?" And I said, "What time is it?" And she said, 6 a.m. And I said, "And what am I doing?" And she said, "Dad's been up since 4, and he wants to have a family meeting." Right. Wow. So that was such a gift for our family to have had that opportunity to be able to communicate. Here's this pragmatic man who says, "Oh my gosh, I have a brain tumor. Am I going to be able to tell you things?" Right. So I got to do it now. Right. And so he proactively did that. I don't know that the average person, jumps into it and does it like that, but it's so important to think about it. And so as an advisor, I always loop this concept in with all the planning because it helps to pull it together, right? Why do we do the things we do? It's for the people we love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, my condolences to you and your family. But I'm just thinking we don't have to wait to do things like this, for a traumatic experience or anything to happen. We can do this stuff today. So that way it's readily available. So if people are interested in doing this, I know on your website, you have Mad Lib style love letter for people that, are like, "Oh my gosh, this is too overwhelming. This is not something that I really want to think about, but I'm familiar with Mad Libs and I can do that." So can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So there was an event that I was doing, and it was a men's program, and it was around Valentine's Day. And I thought, what am I going to give this group of gentlemen to expedite them doing this love letter? Because when you talk about writing your family love letter, and I talk to groups of men and women tend to be more emotionally connected to it and want to do it and get involved. And so a lot of times they'll say, "Well, I took it home and told my husband I needed it." And it's a laborious process. So I really wanted to break it down, make it simple. It's not that complicated, right? Where are your assets? What does the person mean to you? Are there any special pieces of jewelry and somebody that you'd like to give them to, and why? It's just a couple of sentences, but how significant is it to know that your Aunt Sally gave you this piece of jewelry because you were a very special niece and she enjoyed taking you to the beach when you were little? Whatever it is, that's a piece of significance that's gonna impact that other person's life. And I also kind of think when you start doing these things, sometimes you want to give it away when you're living, right?
Yes, for sure. So if people were interested in finding out more about how they can create their love letter or learning more about you and what you have going on, where could they find you?
Sure. Thank you. I have 2 websites. One is called Squeeze the Juice Book, and that's the name of my my book. And that book really is, it describes a family love letter, and then it goes through some basic financial concepts. Don't be scared. It is written for the layperson. It is an easy read. There are stories. It's absorbable. People have shared that they read it in two hours. So it's not a bunch of financial lingo, but it will give you the tools to be aware of the kinds of things you can ask. And at the end, it walks you through writing your family love letter, the different segments of it, and how to go about doing that. And then, of course, just on our regular website, which is my company name, which is Modern Wealth, on that website, you can download the Mad Libs love letter, And we're happy to have you to fill that out, at least as a starting tool.
Yeah, for sure. And if you did not catch all of that, I will make sure that I have all of Jennifer's links in the show notes. So check that out. And I am so grateful that you brought this topic up. And, personally, I have told my family what I wanted, but I think putting it in a letter format is probably going to be better. So there's no confusion. And like your dad, I have it down to, I do want to be cremated. I know what song I want to be playing as they sprinkle my ashes in the ocean. I also need to make sure that I have enough money so that way they can do everything that I want them to do.
True.
So anyway, this gives us a lot to think about. And, for me, it feels like it makes the conversation a little easier because nobody really wants to talk about death and, what comes next and all those things. But these are crucial conversations we have to have. And having a love letter makes it that much easier. So I appreciate you, Jennifer, so much for coming on the show today and sharing your gems with my audience.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.